Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 1% Healthier podcast. Today, I am joined by Amanda Katz. I'm going to read to you all her bio. Amanda Katz is a full-time fitness professional with nearly a decade of experience. Amanda is a certified personal trainer, a run coach, a group fitness instructor specializing in indoor cycling, treadmill running, and total body strength at Equinox in New York City, a creator of the signature formats, as well as a coach for the brand's on-demand app, Equinox Plus. She serves as the on-set personal trainer for the New York Times and consults for fitness publications like Self Magazine. She hosts the Running Explained podcast and dabbles in content creation with brands whose products and stories align with her work. Amanda's philosophy is rooted in realistic, sustainable habits for runners and active individuals because becoming stronger looks different on everyone. So, Amanda, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Megan, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. I've been really excited to have you on because I do align with your philosophy and being realistic and helping people get stronger, not only from the perspective of physically, but also mentally and emotionally. I can tell that you take a very holistic approach. And I wanted to ask you, what do you feel like made you take that approach to fitness rather than a more extreme or a physique or an aesthetic-based approach to running and coaching?
It's such a good question, and I'm always delighted to interact with other fitness professionals who share in that philosophy, and not because it's my own, but because it's the one that keeps folks in the game,
Mm.
right? So I work with fitness enthusiasts and runners as early as age 16 is my youngest client. My eldest is in her early 90s now, and she takes my cycling class. And that is the reason why I have this approach is because I fitness looks different for everyone at every age, at every level. And so to live in extremes is to pretend that those things don't exist, to pretend that age doesn't exist, to pretend that chronic illness doesn't exist, to pretend that disease and disorders and life doesn't exist. And so for me, it's kind of like I have to I have to be cognizant of the fact that I work with real people and not just on social media where we often see these extremes. I'm always curious about the people who promote those messages, if they actually work with real people. And so in my career, I've worked with, at this point, probably thousands of people who are real people with real stories. And fitness has to fit into their lives, not the other way around. And an extremist approach kind of neglects that.
Mm. That's so true. It does neglect that because we are real people and we have real lives. And if we think about fitness taking over our life, then it takes away from your life rather than enhancing your life. So I think that's a really good perspective. Is it is what keeps people in it for the long game and in the long haul. So that's awesome. There was a post that you actually made the other day about how you see fitness now in your 30s is different than how you see it in your 20s, which I was really resonating with because I've also like had that same idea of I need to do like workouts twice a day or I need to do extra work or thinking that we need to burn calories or there's these different approaches and now you feel like you're more balanced and you're more simple and you're more sustainable. Was there any like big switch that you had that personally for you made you see fitness differently and in a more positive light?
Hmm. I think that so prior to my career in fitness, I had about a decade long challenging relationship with food, weight, and my body. At that point, I had not had any real relationship with exercise, to be honest. I know there are some folks who have, unfortunately, a disordered relationship with food, and they happen to also have a disordered relationship with exercise. For me, it was kind of there were habits that I was exploring before my career that I was watching other people engage in. And so I I was mirroring those behaviors, the ones that I mentioned in that post in my 20s. And the older I got, the more I realized that one, like I'm exhausted. Like, why am I going to do that? And it's not, and I'm not
Yeah.
getting any quote unquote results from it. Like, I'm not getting stronger. I'm not feeling better. I'm not showing up in life in a fashion that I wanted to emulate, right? So I was like, So is more? Is more just more? More is not
Mhm.
better. More is just more, right? And in the year 2020, for those of you who may remember, the world shut down in a lot of ways. And one of those ways for me personally was I went from teaching a lot of group fitness classes that while I did not work out in all of these classes, I was still in a lot of, maybe the listener can relate to this, even if you don't work in fitness, maybe you relate to hustle culture. Maybe you relate to being the first to clock in and the last to leave. And I had a lot of those behaviors in my previous life working in politics and in corporate communications. So I carried those behaviors over into my fitness profession.
Yeah.
And the pandemic literally said, no, girl, we're gonna take work away from you. And while that was really scary for me professionally, right, financially, right, it was also the pause that I needed to actually pivot and to direct my energy and my attention to the things that mattered, which meant more physical rest, which meant not burning out on taking, multiple hour classes a day or taking on extra work. It was, how can I leverage my time to not only benefit me professionally, but ultimately personally? Because that's that's what life is about, right? Why are we're working for what? To live better, to live well, to travel, to engage in conversation, to be a part of a community, to be well, right?
Mhm.
We are, although, and I think, Megan, you may be able to relate to this, we are in a very unique position where the work that we do is often confused as a passion, right? Like, people are like, "Oh, that is so amazing, your job. You love what you do." And there's, a slogan, of course. I've heard it before, and maybe it's since died, but correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, that was like, "Love what you do and never work a day in your life." And
Yeah.
I cannot relate to that. Like, you cannot gaslight me into believing that the just because I love what I do, I'm not going to put that higher on the list than prioritizing rest, recovery, and my well being. No,
Mhm.
those things are all way more important to me. And sustaining that is important to me.
Yeah. I didn't know that you had like a background in working in corporate and like hustle culture because I too kind of had that similar experience, not with corporate, but like working in sales where
Oh,
it
okay.
was very hustle culture-y and it felt like, and like there's like part of you that like really enjoys that, but it's also to what extent, right? It was more just more, and am I living my life? And it's really hard to do that when you feel like deep in your core, like your values are, I do value balance. I do value like being present in my life and being intentional. So I think it took me a while to realize that
Mm.
choosing an aligned path actually was a win rather than a loss. Like I felt like stepping away from hustle culture made it feel like I was doing less and I was going to be less. And so like that was kind of a hard mindset to step out of. And similarly, I think with fitness too, when we think about taking rest, sometimes like when you're in like the go, 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 like I want to do more. And I know a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are very ambitious and driven people and have that same kind of personality. Like I want to do more, I want to achieve more and be better every day, essentially. But there comes a point where you realize that more is just more. More is not always better. Better is better. And I've really enjoyed like the post that you make about rest because it reminds me how important it is because when I thought about rest in the past, it used to be like I'm taking a step back. And if I'm not stepping forward, then I'm falling backwards. And so you have to keep that momentum going. Is there a way that you teach your athletes to rest in a way that it helps them move forward? Because I know now that rest is so important. That's what helps you build strength. That's what helps you recover. That's what helps you get faster. But I feel like a lot of people don't get to that point until like later on in their fitness journey because they're just trying to achieve and achieve and achieve. How do you teach your clients about rest?
I hate that it has to be this way, but it's almost like I have to practice what I preach.
Mm,
So, and let me explain that. The reason why I hate it is because I hate that I have to, I'm not somebody who promotes on my platform things that maybe some other influencers do. Like I don't promote my race times, or I don't promote certain metrics that I think people very closely I would identify with success, with PRs, with, the metrics that I promote, that I hope people have. The takeaway is, oh, I see more in that, and that's something I want to achieve. So for example, I've only every minute that passes, we are both aging, right? So as I've gotten older, every distance that I have raced, I have grown faster. And what's the common denominator here? Okay, I'm not a high mileage, high runner, right? Like, however, I am eating more than I ever have before. I sleep a ton. I used to work 5, 6 days a week, and my job's very physical. And so to take an approach where I now, for the last year, I only work 4 days a week. So just like, and sharing that in a way that is not boasty, but to share it like there is abundance in taking a step back. And when I'm talking to my athletes, I remind them that they have to have patience for that process, that you're not going to see that right away. You're not going to see right away that, like, if I fuel more, if I decide, you know what, 6 days a week of running is not going to work. I actually need to scale back to 5, or I need to scale back to 4. And maybe it means like one of those days, instead of running, it's a 30-minute bike ride, right? To continue to condition yourself, but give low impact. Or maybe it just means pulling it out completely, right? You're not going to see that progress right in front of you. And I'm constantly reminding the people I work with that they have to be patient for the process. And I think that the other thing that is really important is reminding people that the content they consume, the communities that they spend time in, those voices are living in our minds and in front of us rent free. And so to surround yourself with voices of people, I have colleagues and good friends in this space who are in their late 30s, early 40s as well, and are just Boston qualifying. I am somebody who had, for example, when it comes to strength gains, right? I learned I had an unfortunate diagnosis in my early 30s that I didn't, unbeknownst to me, I had the bones of pretty much an 80-year-old woman because of my years of eating disordered behaviors, right? And so how do I crawl out of that? Where's the PR for me in that? Well, it took years for me to do things I didn't really want to do. I didn't really want to eat more. I didn't really want to scale back on my training. I didn't really want to be on top of certain biomarkers, but I have normal bone mineral density now. So that is the PR for me, right? It's like these are I try to share in my stories, and I try to remind my athletes that it's all a part of the process. And when they see things, right? When they start to see the rewards in it, when they start to see the magic, when they're like, I cannot believe I hit those times in that last long run workout, or I cannot believe that doing I'm lifting that much in my deadlift. Like, I can't believe that I just spent an entire week with my family hiking this, like, Mount Cadillac, and, like, I'm giving real examples, and I'm not in pain today, because those are real PRs. Those are real flexes, right? It doesn't happen immediately.
Mm.
And patience is just not something that humans are wired to want to have, but that's my job.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder. One, of course, patience, but living by example and sharing the things that really do matter, like your biomarkers, how you show up in your life. Are you getting stronger? Are you living without pain? Rather than just your marathon time. And it's a nice reminder too that you're getting faster as you go, which I feel like, especially when we're young and we're in our 20s, we think that like this is the peak fitness, like we're the youngest and should be like the healthiest and fastest, but really we're just gonna keep getting better the more that we put in the
Mm-hmm.
work. So I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was something that's come to mind a lot recently in conversations is playing to win rather than playing to not lose. And I find that really interesting when it comes to nutrition specifically, especially like feeling for performance and fueling your race and feeling to actually like feel better in your body rather than playing to not lose. Like I don't want to consume this many calories or like playing to not lose as in like I want to prevent myself from looking a certain way or
Okay.
something like
Mhm.
that. And I remember there was a post that you'd made about how at the end of your marathon, you still took a gel because you were thinking ahead. Like, I want to be able to fuel my recovery ahead of time because recovery starts right now. And that just kind of reminded me of the principle. Like, I want to play to win. Like, I'm playing the long game. It's not just like a finish line, right? And I wanted to ask, like, when you think about fueling for your races or fueling for like a long run in general, like, what principles do you live by? Because I know that there's like people listening to this podcast that are getting into running or taking it more seriously, but
Mm-hmm.
probably don't understand like the concept of fueling properly.
Mm-hmm.
What are like important principles that we should know?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I rely on the professionals in my network. So
Mm-hmm.
I am constantly either like if I have in my credentials, I am not qualified to write specifics or customization. But what I do know is I rely on the experts, the sports dietitians who work with endurance athletes. So I am incredibly blessed that they provide me with resources. So we know that like just basics, if you are running, you will do better if you are going into your workouts in a fueled state, and that will look different for everyone. But what I know is that within about an hour of waking up, you should be eating something. And as an endurance athlete, as a runner, that something should be a carbohydrate. And then when I'm out on my runs, depending on the amount of time, right? If it's a run that for me is generally over 60 to 70 minutes, I'm bringing fuel with me. And if it's a short run, that is anywhere between 40 and 80 carbohydrates for that short run. But for any run for me that's over like 90 minutes, I'm taking in about 80 grams of carbohydrates per hour. And that is not something that like I was born with. I didn't share the specifics of my eating disorder, but I had incredibly restrictive anorexia nervosa. I dabbled in binge eating because of the restriction cycle. So my stomach is not better or than anyone else's. In fact, I've had a ton of digestive issues as a result of my my years of eating disordered behaviors, right? So I had to train my gut to tolerate more and to handle them at running at fast paces. So this is something that I have practiced and I've trialed and I've errored, and that's what drives me to continue to fuel is the fact that I want to run and I want to be as active as long as I can. And an unfed, undernourished body is a body that can break.
Mm.
And if you start fueling because you're afraid of being injured, if that's a reason, that should be a reason. I don't want my hair to fall out. I don't want brittle nails. I don't want to sleep like trash. I don't want to be an a-hole to my loved ones. I don't want to be out for the count after a run. Like, I'm able to live my life fully and completely because I keep myself nourished, right? And so these are the things that these are my driving principles that I remind my one-on-one clients of when we're working on just getting them to consume a little bit more, because I would say that somewhere between probably 50 and 60% of the people I work with have either had unintentional or an intentional disordered relationship with food, weight, and their body. and many of whom work with me in part because I approach my services from an eating disorder informed lens. And that's the work we do. Like, I don't just provide a plan. I'm like, all right, you see how that run this upcoming Saturday is X amount of time? What are we doing the day before to make sure that you feel good for that run? What's your plan? How have you prepped your bottles? Have you prepped your gels? Like, these are conversations that we're having. We're not waiting till race day. We're doing it throughout training. So I think that answers
Yeah.
most of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the idea in whole of like a fueled runner is a fast runner and like a fueled runner is the best that you can be is so important because again, I hope that more people can experience that as not only just like enjoying like the runs or enjoying your workouts more, but the other things that you mentioned about impacting your life, about being well fed and nourished is I'm nicer to people, I get better sleep, I feel better, I can recover more. All of that comes from fueling your body properly. And yeah, I just think that that's so important for
Yeah.
us to understand and experiment with.
And I don't know what your demographic of listeners is, but if there are people in their 20s, and even if you're in your 30s, I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, but you may be getting away with underfueling your body, right? You may be getting away with it. The debt collector comes. So, even if you think like, oh, I haven't had a broken bone, I haven't had a stress fracture, I didn't have any of that either. But my bones were at osteoporosis levels. And the only reason I knew is because I have a lot of self awareness and I knew my history of eating disorders because of the time of my life that I was incredibly restrictive and undernourished. I knew that that time of life is where your peak bone mineral density is really like happening. So if it's not happening for me because I'm not giving my body what it needs, well, guess what? You enter your 30s, you're already at a deficit. It starts to go down. It starts to go down. So the ways that we build bone, we know, are by eating enough food, lifting weights, and jump training, aka plyometrics. But you can't you can't engage in that exercise and be underfed.
Hmm.
Like, you don't get to build bone without being fed. So I think that this is a very natural experience for folks who are quote unquote young to believe that there's like you're invincible. You're not. you're
Hmm.
just you're just not. So if you're getting fed because you want to get faster, if you're eating enough to get and you want to be faster, that's a great reason. But another great reason is for you to not break a hip or have like a pelvic stress fracture or sacral stress fracture at age 34. Like, that's actually wild, So if you're in a position to do more for yourself, why wouldn't you?
Ooh, that's good. I'll double click on that. If you're in a position to do more for yourself, why wouldn't you? That's really good. And I love what you said earlier that the debt collector comes. Like you might not notice it right away. You might not notice it now, but the things that we do right now are building momentum in the future, whether it's positive or negative. So I
Yeah.
love I love
No,
that.
and I don't say it as a threat. Like, I'm coming from a place of, and I think that if you, and Megan knows this because she's been following me for a while, but my approach, this is how I am in real life. So my approach is, I'm coming from a place of, yes, it may sound tough, but this is the reality.
Hmm.
And I don't think, and I wish that enough people were real with me when I was that age and they didn't know better. A lot of the people in my life who were concerned about me just didn't know. They knew the impact it was having in the present moment. They knew the impact it was having maybe visibly, right? But we also know, and this, you can look this up, medically underweight folks with eating disorders are the minority. The majority of folks do not present visibly as having an eating disorder because an eating disorder is a mental health illness, right?
Hmm.
So For me, I just happened to have been in the minority where it was something that you see in movies of a woman, also a white presenting woman. I am Latina, I am Jewish, but I'm white presenting, right? Like I was the cookie cutter person with an eating disorder, right? But there's not a lot of information, which is also why I'm so big on talking about bone health and talking about disordered eating and fueling your body properly on my page, because there wasn't that information readily available. So if I have to be the first to tell you, like, it can happen to you, I'm going to be the first to tell you, not only can it happen to you, if you keep playing with fire, it will happen to you. And I don't like saying that, but that's the truth.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But that's the reality. So,
Yeah.
and they like what you're saying too, is like it's not a threat, but it's like making you aware, like you can take better care of yourself. So again,
I
why
would
wouldn't
too.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about was when it comes to taking running more seriously, obviously you want to be a healthy runner and a strong runner and a nourished runner. For the runners and the people that are wanting to get faster, I feel like we hear a lot about zone two running, and then also there's speed workouts and there's interval training. What role does zone two running play? And like how important is that for like people that are like not like super high athletes? Because I feel like you hear like, things like, oh, it's really, really important for everybody. And it's also like not important if you're not doing like a ton of volume in your running. Where do you feel like lower intensity or like zone two running plays a role?
So, yeah, it's just a marketing term at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the role is that if you are a an endurance athlete, and when I say endurance, I mean anyone who is okay. So if you're training for like halves and marathons and ultra marathons, the bulk of your training should be at an effort. I would not even worry about zones. I would say an effort that feels like you could hold a conversation for the effort, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's holding the conversation for 4 miles or 14 miles. That should be the majority of your training when you look at your training week. When it comes to folks who are for just general fitness, what I say is that if you can get out the door 3 times a week for somewhere between like 30 minutes to an hour on the high end, and maybe, 2 of those days are at that conversational effort, and one of those days you're working very hard, sprinkled in, not very hard the whole time, but sprinkled in, then you're pretty set up for good cardiovascular fitness. And I also need to say, even though there may be runners listening to this, for those of you who are listening to this and you're like, I've started to run, but I don't like running, you don't have to run for your cardiovascular fitness. In fact, don't run. You don't have to run. You can do literally anything else that gets your heart rate up. You can take a spin class. You can box. You can swim. You can do a Zumba class. You can do things that you enjoy that get your heart rate up. The things that are non negotiable in my book, and I'm going to assume Megan's book, are strength training.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Because even if you never run another day in your life, if you decide, all right, I heard Amanda on this podcast, I don't really like running, I'm never going to run again, or I'm just going to dabble in the family turkey trot, whatever it is, strength training is going to keep your body more resilient in every decade of your life. It's going to help you walk off a curb and not twist your ankle, fall on your face. It's going to help you when a bike is approaching you and you need to rotate your body quickly to step back off that curb. It's going to help you pick your grandkids up off the floor without having to be picked up yourself, right? That's a non-negotiable. Strength training is an insurance policy.
Mm.
So zone 2, get that out of your head. If you are again training for an event, and even I mean I have my folks who want to get faster at the 5K 10K, because I have runners who that they never want to run anything more than like 10 miles maybe. the majority of their training also is like at that conversational effort because we can build a lot of volume without a lot of strain on the body.
Mm. When you talk about the efforts, how do you adjust when you start at an effort and a pace that feels conversational, but then like your heart rate gets higher and it gets less manageable, or like the effort is higher? Do you slow your pace down to come back to the effort, or do you continue at that same pace that you're trying to hit?
No, because you're not, when you're, well, if you're trying to run at easy effort, there is no pace.
Mm, okay.
Most runners will have a range of paces within their easy effort zone. There is no easy pace. Majority of my role when I start working with a runner is I'm slowing them down.
Mm,
Because what we see is that I have a lot of folks, let's say that the New York City Marathon happened, right? So I happen to have, I'm not taking any more clients, but I happen to have had an uptick in people who wanted to work with me, fresh off a marathon block. So when I'm looking at their data and I see their marathon time, and then I see what they are calling their easy time, their easy effort pace. They're like, oh, that was my easy run. I'm like, your easy run is the same time as your marathon, or it's within a few seconds. So what is actually happening is you're not actually running easy. You need to slow down. And they don't love hearing that because in their mind, and what they've seen on social media is that anything under a arbitrary number, 10 minutes, 11 minutes, whatever it is slow. And then I have to remind them that actually, no, that's not slow at all. In fact, I want you to go even slower than that. What they find is that they will go slower than that. They'll go between 90 seconds, 2 minutes slower than the time that they want on the clock for the marathon. And they will hit the time that they want on the marathon because they will run at a slower pace.
mm,
So there is no number that you should be shooting for when it comes to easy effort running. When you are working with, this is my philosophy as a coach. My philosophy is that you got to kind of earn those paces for when it comes to speed work. So when I start working with somebody and we layer in speed work, right? Because the majority of their runs are easy. And then one day of the week, let's say, all right, you're ready for a speed day, track workout, whatever. I'm not plugging in paces yet. They have to figure out, what does hard work feel like in their body? What does a 7 out of 10 effort feel like to hold for a minute, 2 minutes, 400 meters around the track?
mm,
That you have to figure out first because your body doesn't know time, it knows intensity. So for me to put, hey, I need you to do 200 meters in 75 seconds. What? That's not how your body works. That's You're not a robot. Like we have to see like what what are you actually capable of hitting for 75 seconds? What distance are you actually capable of hitting for that amount of time? Recovering, whether that's an recovery at easy or completely a walk or stop. Those are the options to get that heart rate back down,
mm-hmm,
to then get back to the effort to execute the workout. Like that's what I am looking at as a coach.
mm. I love that. And so when you do those speed workouts, are you looking to like maintain the pace, or are we like nixing like working on pace? We're thinking about like effort altogether. Like if I'm doing like 400-meter repeats like 10 times,
Hmm.
are you wanting to do
That's a
like a
great
7 out of
question.
10 effort all the time?
So you should leave that workout feeling like you could have done one or two more reps.
Mm, okay. That's really cool to hear because like I understand like these concepts like I get in strength training, right? Like your body does not know time, it knows stress, it knows intensity. Your body
Yeah.
doesn't know the weight that it's lifting, it knows the tension that it's feeling, which
Mm-hmm.
I feel like is something that I really try and help clients understand. Like, if you cannot lift the weight and do these amount of reps, and if you cannot maintain your form, then let's change the weight. Let's do something better for you. But for whatever
That's the
reason,
ego driving the car,
yes.
though. And it's the same thing for runners. And I even, depending on who you talk to, this could be a hot take. I think runners are worse.
I can see
And
that.
I,
I can so
as
see
a
that.
runner and as somebody who strength trains, I'm gonna go out and say that.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I feel like getting into running over the past few years has been like a real death to the ego. It's like, I should really
I
slow
gotta slow down.
down. Yes, yes. Okay, so that's super helpful because sometimes I feel like in running when I run by myself or I'm running on the treadmill and like I'm wanting to hit these like mentally I'm like I want to hit these paces.
Sure.
But what if I'm at 2 minutes of like this 3 minute rep and I'm like, holy crap, I can't do it anymore. It makes me think like, okay, do I like maintain the pace or do I slow down to keep the effort going to finish?
Well, so that's like you gotta check in with yourself.
Mm,
Is the story you're telling yourself I can't maintain the pace mental, or do you physically feel out of control? If you physically feel out of control, then that's real. You should dial back your pace. But if it's the mental hurdle of getting through that rep, that's different. So you always want to feel like you are in control of especially on a treadmill. When you're a treadmill train, I think the treadmill is the best tool for speed training. I will die on that hill.
I
It is
love it.
the best tool for speed training, right? It's in a controlled setting, it's safe, and you can't BS it. And people who are treadmill haters are just afraid of the treadmill.
So
It's
true.
okay. It's okay, babe. It's okay to be afraid of the treadmill, but like she's a tool that people should utilize. And so what you're describing is very normal. And there are probably some competing voices in your head when you're going through that rep. And one of the voices is like running on the treadmill is like not for the weak. And I gotta I gotta tell some voices in my head to shut up and just get through this rep. But if you feel like the belt is going beyond something that you can handle, then that's the answer. You can't handle it.
Mm, I love that perspective. Bringing it back to, are you in control? Or are you out of control?
Hmm.
Because it feels very similar to like the reps. Do the weights control you? Are you controlling the reps? Are you controlling the form? Are you just like flying around? Like that's that's
Yes.
very, yeah, thank you for that.
Yes.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, kind of in conclusion here with like getting faster and making progress with speed or with distance, is what do you focus on in your training to create the outcomes that you want to create, to create quote unquote results? Because as a fellow coach, I also am like, okay, well, there's only so much weight that you can put on an outcome, and there's so much more that you can put on the process and staying in the process and the inputs of your training. What do you have yourself focus on, as well as like your athletes, to keep yourself in the process and focus on what matters right in the moment, but also planning for the outcomes that you want? Is there anything that you really like to focus on or have people focus on when they're wanting a result?
So I'm not a big believer in when somebody comes to me with a very specific like I want to run this time. I don't really even humor that conversation yet,
Mm,
because we don't know what we don't know. There, of course, like if there's trends, a person has been a runner for X amount of years. This is where they tend to live this is their PR time in the last 2 years. This is what happens on a good day so we can draw some conclusions, right? But I'm not going to humor a conversation about potential fitness. We're going to talk about current fitness. And that's why most of the people who work with me for like year round. We're not we're not doing, I don't take on anyone who's like 12 weeks, 16-week. My minimum commitment is generally 6 months. And the folks that I work with me throughout the year, which is which is a privilege and an honor. But the reason being that you can't look at fitness like that.
Agree.
And everyone's going to have different timelines. There are people who, because one, genetics, and two, just like how their body responds to the stress that we are putting on it, and because of life, right? Like those are the things that are going to come up when you put an outcome in front of you. I don't recommend that like people put times on their vision boards and whatnot. No, we're focused on the process. We're focused on 1 week at a time. And that is there are many reasons to invest in a coach. While I understand that it's not financially accessible to everyone, but one of the biggest reasons is that like you have somebody in your corner daily
Hmm.
throughout. Like me creating a plan to that finish line is the smallest part of my job. It's the day to day. So I keep people really focused on the tiny daily habits. I keep people focused on the process and the week to week wins. And I think all of those things are lost in the process because you're going to cross that finish line. You're going to enjoy it for 15 minutes. You're going to write your race recap on Instagram. And then you're going to be chasing the next thing.
Hmm.
And that, and who wins when you do that? So if you fall in love with, you know what, I found something I like, whether that's a 5K, like I really love the 5K. I love to be fast, or it's the marathon, right? Because you don't have to run a marathon to be inspired by one. You don't have to run a 5K to be inspired by one. But you do have to find something that you enjoy doing. And so if you can find that, and that's my job to help folks find that and then to lead them through that week to week and to find those wins and those mesocycles, right? And those time periods. That's what gets you to ultimately, it may not be on the timeline that they initially thought, but that's what gets them to the outcome that they desire.
That's so well said. Keeping them focused on the process and the week to week and the wins and the small habits day to day because that's what you get. That's where we live is the day to day. We don't live at the outcomes that, like you said, you're going to cross the finish line and then you're going to be on to the next. And if you don't actually enjoy the journey, then the destination is going to mean very little. So
Totally.
I love that. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for the wisdom that you've shared today about getting faster and about effort training and about mindset work and the importance of rest. I feel like I've learned a lot and I'm excited to do my speed
Oh,
workout today and like really think
go
about effort.
off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yes.
My last question for you, Amanda, is what does 1% healthier mean to you?
Mm, it means taking time every day to celebrate your excellence because every day you are in a position to look at the day and say, where can I show up as my best self? And then at the end of your day, say, where did I show up as my best self? And for me, that 1% better comes from pacing myself and taking those times in the beginning of my day and at the end of my day. And my, not just my health, I guess it is my health, what I'm about to say, but my nervous system just thanks me.
Mm,
It's not, I'm not in a rush. It's not about go, go, go. It's celebrating something that I did that day, multiple things and ways that I showed up that day, and pacing myself through those moments and taking a step back.
mm. So well said. I love that answer. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. For all the people that want to connect with you more, where can they find you? What social medias do you have?
Oh gosh. Okay, yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Amanda underscore Katz with two Z's. I am on TikTok as Coach Amanda Katz. I have a Substack that I put out a newsletter every week. I have different communities on there where I talk about health, wellness, mindset, everything that we talked about in this conversation. I'm the host of the Running Explained podcast, which is new episodes coming out at the end of January. So check me out there. And I think that's about it. Reach out to me and say hello. I love to connect with people in the community and I want to be a part of your story.
I love that. Awesome. Well, for those that are listening, I'll have all the social links linked in the description box below for you guys to continue to learn from Amanda. So thank you guys for listening to this podcast. And Amanda, thank you for being here. This was awesome.
Megan, thank you for having me.
Of course. We hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.